There are conversations that change our lives the moment they happen. And then there are conversations that never happen at all, yet somehow continue shaping our hearts for years. Most people believe silence means nothing was left to say. But silence can sometimes carry more emotion than words ever could. This message is for the soul who has been wondering why someone connected to their journey has recently become more reflective than ever before, because something unexpected has been happening inside them. Not because they received new information, not because someone from the past suddenly appeared, but because they have started remembering the words they never spoke. For a long time, they believed that remaining silent was the safest choice. Silence avoided conflict. Silence protected pride. Silence allowed life to continue without uncomfortable conversations. At least that is what they told themselves. Whenever emotions became difficult to explain, they chose patience instead of honesty. Whenever their heart wanted to ask an important question, they convinced themselves that the moment was not right. Whenever vulnerability appeared, they quietly postponed it until another day. Days became months, months became years, and little by little, silence became a habit instead of a decision. They rarely noticed it happening. From the outside, life continued moving. Responsibilities increased. New routines developed. Different chapters opened. Yet somewhere inside, certain emotions never truly reached their ending. Recently something changed. Not through an emotional event, but through an ordinary conversation they witnessed between two strangers. One person spoke honestly. The other listened without judgment. The exchange lasted only a few minutes. Most people would have forgotten it before the day ended. But your soulmate couldn't. They kept thinking about one simple truth they observed. Neither person seemed afraid of being misunderstood. They simply chose honesty over hesitation. That moment quietly followed them home. Later that evening, they found themselves asking a question they had avoided for years. When did I stop saying what I truly feel? The answer did not arrive immediately. Instead, memories began appearing one after another. Small moments they had almost forgotten. Times when they wanted to express gratitude but remained quiet. Moments when they wanted to apologize but believed too much time had already passed. Conversations they wished had continued, but allowed to end because uncertainty felt easier than vulnerability. None of these memories arrived with anger. They arrived with clarity. For the first time, they understood that silence had never solved those emotions. It had only delayed understanding them. As this realization grew, they became more aware of something else. Throughout their life, they often believed emotional honesty required perfect timing, the perfect opportunity, the perfect words, the perfect certainty. Now they are beginning to understand that perfection rarely exists inside meaningful conversations. Authenticity does. People do not remember perfect sentences. They remember genuine ones. That realization touched something deep within them. It reminded them that some of the most meaningful experiences in life happen when people are willing to be imperfect, yet honest. Over the following days, they noticed another pattern. Whenever they replayed important memories, they rarely focused on what someone else had said. Instead, they focused on what they themselves never expressed. The encouragement they withheld, the appreciation they assumed others already knew, the emotions they expected time to communicate on their behalf. Time never did. That understanding has quietly changed the way they see themselves. They are no longer asking whether silence was right or wrong. They are asking why honesty once felt so difficult. Perhaps they feared rejection. Perhaps they feared changing a relationship forever, or perhaps they simply feared becoming emotionally visible. Whatever the reason, they are beginning to understand that avoiding vulnerability never truly protected the heart. It simply postponed healing. Now something within them is changing, not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. They have begun choosing smaller acts of honesty in everyday life, thanking people more sincerely, listening more carefully, expressing appreciation before the opportunity disappears, admitting when they don't have every answer. These moments seem ordinary, yet each one quietly weakens the emotional walls they spent years building. For the first time in a long while, they are discovering that honesty does not always create discomfort. Very often, it creates freedom. And perhaps this quiet discovery is preparing them for a future where their heart is no longer guided by fear of saying the wrong thing, but by the courage to finally say what truly matters. Because sometimes the conversation that changes a person's life begins long before a single word is ever spoken. The quiet reflections did not disappear after a few days. Instead, they became part of your soulmate's everyday life. Each morning brought another opportunity to observe themselves with greater honesty. Each evening became a chance to understand what their heart had been trying to communicate for years. Slowly, they began noticing something unexpected. The emotions they once believed belonged to the past were no longer asking to be relived. They were asking to be understood. That realization changed everything. For years, they believed emotional closure depended on another person, a conversation, an explanation, an apology, a perfect opportunity to finally say everything that had remained inside. Now they are beginning to understand that real healing begins much earlier. It begins the moment a person becomes completely honest with themselves. That honesty has started revealing patterns they never noticed before. Whenever life presented an opportunity to express something meaningful, they often convinced themselves there would be another chance. Another day, another conversation, another season. But life rarely promises another perfect moment. Sometimes the opportunity itself is the gift, and only later do we recognize how valuable it truly was. This thought stayed with them, not to create regret, but to awaken gratitude for every chance that still exists today. As their perspective continued changing, they also became more aware of how often people around them quietly carry emotions they never speak aloud. A friend who smiles while hiding exhaustion, a family member who longs to feel understood, a stranger who simply needs someone willing to truly listen. They realize something beautiful. Every person is fighting silent battles that the world cannot see. That understanding made them gentler, more patient, more compassionate. Instead of assuming they knew someone else's story, they became curious. Instead of preparing the next response while another person was speaking, they truly listened. And in those moments, they discovered something remarkable. Listening with presence is one of the purest forms of kindness. It asks for nothing. It simply creates space where another heart feels safe enough to exist. As these quiet lessons settled within them, another realization appeared. They no longer wanted relationships built upon assumptions. They wanted relationships built upon honesty, not perfect honesty. Human honesty, the kind that allows uncertainty, the kind that admits fear without shame, the kind that says, "I don't have every answer, but I want to understand." That simple shift has transformed the way they connect with others. They have become less interested in winning conversations, more interested in creating understanding, less concerned with appearing strong, more willing to appear real, and strangely, they have discovered that authenticity earns deeper respect than perfection ever could. There is another lesson they are only now beginning to embrace. Silence itself was never the problem. Sometimes silence brings peace. Sometimes it allows healing. Sometimes it helps the heart hear truths that noise cannot reveal. The real question is different. Is the silence creating understanding? Or is it hiding fear? That distinction has become one of the greatest lessons of their journey. Now, whenever they choose silence, they ask themselves why. Is it wisdom or is it avoidance? If it is wisdom, they welcome it. If it is fear, they gently challenge it. That one habit has begun changing every area of their life. They speak with greater intention. They forgive more quickly. They appreciate ordinary moments before they become memories. And perhaps the greatest change of all, they no longer expect life to become perfect before allowing themselves to live with an open heart. They understand that courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is choosing authenticity while uncertainty still exists. As they continue walking this path, they feel lighter than they have in years. Not because every unanswered question has disappeared, but because they are no longer carrying emotions that were never meant to remain hidden forever. The heart was never asking for perfection. It was asking for honesty. That honesty has become the beginning of a completely different future. A future where conversations are no longer delayed by fear, where gratitude is spoken while there is still time, where kindness is expressed instead of assumed, where vulnerability is recognized as quiet strength rather than weakness. Perhaps this has been the lesson life was patiently waiting to teach. Not every life-changing conversation happens between two people. Some of the most important conversations happen silently, between a person and their own heart. And once that conversation finally begins, everything else slowly starts changing with it. Your soulmate is discovering that the words they never spoke were never meant to become permanent regrets. They were gentle invitations, calling them toward a more honest, more compassionate, and more emotionally awake way of living. Now they understand that every new day offers another opportunity, another chance to choose truth over hesitation, presence over distraction, connection over fear, and perhaps that quiet choice will become the reason the next chapter of their life feels unlike anything they have experienced before. Because the greatest transformation was never waiting for the perfect conversation with someone else. It was waiting for the moment they finally stopped hiding from the truth within themselves. And now, that moment has arrived.